it becomes the equivalent of a 25-foot tall Roman candle.
So you don't have to remove the entire window. It's a matter of taking out one of the inserts and replacing it.
And you know that the whole mold thing, it's really bad for your breathing. Welcome to another edition of Real Estate for Real People. My name is Brad Whitaker.
My name is Marianne Whitaker.
And she is also known as the Better Half. All right, so today, seeing that what do they call it? The
spring equinox.
Okay. So
also known as first day of spring.
Or daylight savings time.
Nope,
for those of
different
us who,
thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
They do not happen on the same day, surprisingly enough.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. I've learned something already, and it's
there
only
we go.
whatever time it is.
And we're supposed to be teaching.
Right.
Okay. It's all good.
It is good. Okay, so as the spring selling season ramps up, and this is in our part of the world, it's really rainy during the winter. And so the first time the sun pops its head through the clouds,
like yesterday or day before
every
yesterday.
tree all of a sudden just explodes, and it's springtime.
It's allergy time too.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. So anyway, so we want, if you are thinking about getting your home on the market, or if you are not, these are still things that you'll want to look at, consider, take advantage of, because delayed maintenance on your home is brutally expensive if you let it go over time. So we're going to go through the what's and how's, to maybe even a why in there sooner or later, as to why you would want to take care of your house and what projects you want to get started. So let's start at the top.
Okay, well, I do want to say that really houses are not like set it and forget it assets. You kind of have to take care of them.
It's not like an email campaign?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
Nothing like an email campaign.
Okay, so not just okay. So what do you mean by that?
Well, just kind of like we're talking about today.
Yeah.
You need to pay attention to what's going on with your house. It may surprise you to know that houses actually breathe. Not the way that you and I do, but the characteristics of a house change whether somebody's living in it or not. And so when you are living in it, it's a really good idea to pay attention to the health of your house and take care of it. Kind of like you're talking about inside and out.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. Love that. So let's start at the top.
Okay. At the top.
Roof.
Chimney.
Chimney.
Ooh. Yes. So
what are the problems that can occur over the winter with your roof?
Well, it's not so much what happens during the winter to your roof as you need to figure out if something has happened to your roof during the winter. Right? Mm-hmm. So there are two places that most of us do not like to go in our house. They are...
The bathroom?
No, Brad, not the bathroom. There are two places. Well, depending on who your spouse is, that may be fair.
Okay, sorry.
There are two places in your house that most of us don't like to go. One of those is the attic, because, you know,
there's spiders and cobwebs and
there
all kinds
are,
of
and
nasty
it's
stuff.
not the easiest place necessarily to get to.
No.
And then the other is a crawl space.
Oh, underneath the house.
Underneath the house.
Yeah.
And both of those places, those are where all the, what we call the boogeyman hide.
Oh, that's for sure.
All the things that are really structurally and foundationally important. So, roof. Get up in that attic, or get somebody to get up there and see if there's been any leaking, if there's any staining.
What does staining mean?
Staining
and
just
where
means
would you look for it?
You're looking for it on what we call the underlayment of the roof. So
that's the wood part.
The wood part that
you're going to bump your head on when you stand up.
Yes.
Right.
The wood part that the shingles are attached to.
Got it.
Okay. So you're going to want to go up there and see if there's any, kind of like a stain. It looks like a water stain.
Like dark spots.
Dark spots that are usually centered in one space, and then they eke out. Right.
And occasionally we've even seen them colored white.
We have.
Or blue-green.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pay special attention to those. Have somebody that's a professional maybe come in. That could be an indicator of, what is it that home inspectors call it? Because they can't call it mold or anything
Well,
else.
the rest of us call it mold, but
Yeah.
home inspectors call it biogrowth.
Yeah. So, So just check it out. Make sure that your roof is healthy. And if you do that every year or every 6 months even, you can track changes in the roof. And if you're starting to see staining, that's probably an indicator that your roof is failing in some form or fashion. Not that you're going to have to replace the entire thing, but maybe there is a tile missing or a shingle missing. And so getting somebody out there to make sure that that is sealed up and tight, so you don't have to worry about mold and such things up in the attic area.
So it could also mean if you have a beautifully brand new roof, you could still find staining inside your attic because a bathroom vent has become disconnected,
yes.
and all that hot, moist air that your fan is pushing out of your bathroom every time you shower or take a bath is being pumped into your attic.
Yep.
And that moisture inside your attic goes up and it hits the wood and it parks there. And because you have asphalt shingles or a metal roof on the other side, it's not leaving. So we've seen people who have perfectly fine roofs and all this black stain on the plywood underneath the shingles because there's vent fans that basically most people will just kind of tape them to the port that goes out of the roof. And then over time, that tape just fails. Because the one thing that I don't know if you've never been in your attic in the summer, it can be in excess of 200 degrees up there. And glue on tape at 200 degrees doesn't
do
last
well.
very long, season after season after season.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and it's getting sticky and then it's getting hard in the winter. So
it just works its
doesn't
way.
work it.
Yeah.
Doesn't work very well.
So you got to be careful about whether it's water coming from the outside or moist air coming up from the inside of the house. The other thing to remember, so we had a home inspector come and do a class at our office one time, and he said that in the crawl space, you have that layer of visqueen or plastic.
Thick plastic.
Yeah, and it's called a vapor barrier, and they call it a vapor barrier for a reason because there's moisture that's coming out of the ground all the time.
Right.
And if you don't have that vapor barrier down, you'll run 8,000 gallons of moisture through your home and up into your attic every month.
Every month?
Every month. And so, well, you're looking at me like that's funny.
Oh.
You think that's a year?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's just surprising.
It is surprising. But it's a lot of water. And when it's water vapor, you don't see it, right? It's not like you're seeing raindrops go up through your house. But if you don't have that vapor barrier.
If you do, we have another issue at hand.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have that plastic vapor barrier underneath your house, you're pouring water into your attic. And when you've got shingles, asphalt, or metal roof, there's nowhere for that water to go. And so that staining is just going to get rampant. So,
More and more.
Yeah, so we got to watch out for that. And there are mold specialists in your area. They can come and fog your entire attic, and it kills all the mold spores. So instead of just looking at one little space and washing that with bleach or something, because you got to remember bleach is almost all water. So if you're adding water to mold, water is the food source for mold. So we got to be very careful about that. Not that I'm a mold expert. I've just talked to a lot of mold experts.
Right. And to that note, if you are finding something that you need taken care of in your house, talk to a local realtor, because we have vendors that we deal with all the time. And so it's kind of our job. And so contact somebody and ask them if they know of anybody they would recommend that they've worked with and trust.
And the big joke in our industry is everybody knows a realtor, right? Everybody's got a friend or a family member that's a realtor, because there are 1.5 million of us in the country. So, chances are you know somebody who's a realtor. But if you are the couple people in the country that don't hesitate to just randomly call any real estate office and ask the person that answers the phone for a recommendation to any type of a vendor expert, mold, construction, whatever, and they'd be happy to give you that information.
Yep.
So
Don't have to necessarily be buying or selling. We provide services for the entire community. So
Right.
there we go.
Yep. Okay, so that's our attic and our roof. Let's talk real quick about the chimney and why that's a problem. Okay.
So chimneys obviously are going through the house, through the roof. And so if things are not sealed well around the chimney,
The flashing.
that becomes an issue for the attic. And again, we have leaking, right?
Yep.
The other thing you're going to want to check is if it's an older, especially if it's an older chimney, that mortar that holds all those bricks together, check it out and make sure it's in good shape. Have somebody come over and take a look at it if it's not. I think the other thing, if you've been, speaking of chimneys, if you've been using yours a lot during the winter, it may be a good time to clean it. Have a chimney sweep come over and take care of the soot, all the creosote and everything inside of it. The last thing you need when you start using your chimney again in the winter or fall is a chimney fire. So again, the things that we use that we don't necessarily think about that need to be taken care of.
It becomes the equivalent of a 25-foot tall Roman candle.
It does.
Is what it does.
True
When
story.
that creosote catches on fire, it goes. Okay, so the other thing, there are some chimneys that are entirely on the outside of the house.
Yes.
They don't run through the house at all. And you need to look at that because we've seen numerous chimneys on older homes that are starting to pull away from the house. That is definitely a problem because it always happens slowly over time, right? It's not like it just stands there and then falls over one day, right? But what that means is the foundation below your chimney has failed. And or you've got water in the ground and it's causing the foundation under the chimney to fail. And that could then fall on your fence, a neighbor's house, and now you've got a huge insurance claim and it can get really expensive. And it's kind of devastating. I mean, chimneys are, they're big, they're heavy, and they're expensive. So keep and maintain them as best you can. There's a cap on the chimney. Usually made out of concrete, and that gets nothing but full bore sun all day long, and all the water and all the snow and all the ice. You got to remember that any time that concrete cracks, if water gets in it and it freezes, it's going to continue to crack that concrete, and it's just a source for water to continue to get in. So we got to be very careful about that. So enough about the chimneys.
Okay.
Let's get to gutters and downspouts.
So hopefully you all, during the fall and before winter came, were able to clean out your downspouts. If you haven't done it in the last 6 months, and there's been a lot of debris flying through the air, obviously with all the
like
wind
leaves
and
off the
rain,
trees?
leaves, pine needles, fir needles, all the things. You're going to want to have those cleaned out because yes, we're getting into summer, but spring is around here in Southwest Washington is obviously a very wet time of year. There's a reason we're green.
Okay.
So you're going to want to just make sure that all of those are cleaned out. The other thing is if you have downspouts that end right by the foundation, if you don't have them yet, you're going to want to get what we call, what are they, blocks?
Splash blocks?
Splash blocks. That direction the water away from the foundation of your house. Because again, foundations are concrete, and the more that it is saturated with water, that's not good for your house or for the foundation or any cracks that are near there where the water may be seeping in.
So you're saying that because houses are heavy, if the ground underneath the foundation is soggy, you might have a problem?
You might have a problem.
Okay.
So you're going to want to wick that water or direct that water away from the foundation. So check that out. Make sure that that's happening on your house.
And it doesn't have to be far, gang. We're talking if you can just get it a piece of black tube that's 4 feet away from the foundation. That's all you need. It's not like you got to drive it all the way out to the
Right.
gutter system in the city street.
And the splash blocks, if you have the ground that is flowing away or angling away from the house, the splash blocks without the tubing
Yep.
could work just
Yep.
fine. But if the ground is flat or
We call
or
negative
tilted
grade.
up, negative grade,
Where
you'll
you've-
want something to get it away from the house.
Yeah, we see people that put planting beds with flowers beside their house. What they don't realize is the dirt underneath, the bark may look like it's going away, but the dirt underneath could be a negative grade. And that water goes through the bark real easy and it hits the dirt and it goes straight to your foundation. So you got to be careful about flower beds and that kind of stuff.
Just be aware.
Yeah, that's super, super important. There are houses in certain parts of the world that don't even have gutters, right? Because they get ice and snow and they just get
yes.
ripped off.
Yes.
So you're really going to want to be like in Bend, like in our, close to us. You've got to take a walk around, and we'll talk about that when we talk about siding. But as that water drips off the edge of your roof, it's going to hit the ground, and if it doesn't hit something that's like drain rock, it's going to splash mud and water up onto the side of your house. So you got to be careful about that too, right? This is going to become about like maintenance and pressure washing and that kind of stuff. So, so just to be clear, gutters are the thing that catch the water. The downspouts take the water away from the gutters. But before we get off this, I want to talk real briefly about what could happen to your shingles over the winter.
Okay.
Right? Slippery green algae, moss, and mold, as the 30 Seconds Cleaner ad says. We've seen people that have more moss than shingle on their
True.
roof. Looks like a bio-growth field.
Science experiment.
Yeah, but we've also seen this stuff that's like golf ball size balls of moss just all over. So moss will destroy your roof. Most shingles right now are built, a few houses are 20-year shingles, asphalt shingles. Most are 30 architectural. But what that means is, at best case scenario, that roof's going to last 30 years. That's only if you're maintaining it regularly, like annually. So you'll see, I know you've seen it because we've talked about it. You'll go by somebody's house and there's all this white powder sprayed up on the roof, and you're like,
What's that?
What is that? Well, that's a mixture that they use. They put it up when the roof is dry, and then as it rains, that stuff runs down the roof and it kills the moss at its roots. The moss goes gray. The problem is it doesn't take it off.
No.
It just kills it. So you need to have a professional come and clean your roof. The problem is, don't ever hire somebody who's going to pressure wash your roof if you have an asphalt shingle roof.
Sweep it.
Yeah,
They need
because
to sweep it.
those little grains that make the colored pattern up there are what
On the shingle.
On the shingle, they protect the asphalt, the gooey stuff, from the sun and the rain. And if you pressure wash all that off, you've just basically got a gooey tar roof.
Not going to last
not gonna
20
last.
to 30 years.
Yeah, so we've seen people pressure wash a 5-year-old roof and turn it into a 25-year-old roof because the pressure washer
Or less.
was set way too hard and he blew all the granules down into the gutters. So if you want to kill a roof really fast, have
that.
an absolute novice pressure wash your roof. Or even worse, do it yourself.
Don't do that.
It gets very expensive. So you save $500 by pressure washing your own roof, and then it costs you $30,000 to put a new roof on. Not a great
Not a good exchange,
No, not really. But we've seen it more than once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to recap, 2 parts. Get the moss to be killed,
Yep.
and then sweep it.
Right. So you can get a stiff broom, like a push broom, and sweep most of the big chunks off. If there's a little bit of stuff left over, the gray, dead moss, it's not going to be too much,
yeah.
not going to damage anything. But get the big stuff off, because everybody has heard, if you've been watching the news at all, that insurance companies are starting to pull out of states right now because of the damage that happens. We're also seeing insurance companies start to take pictures of the home that they're going to insure. And if there's moss on the roof at all, they will decline coverage. So you've got to be very careful. If you're selling your home, you cannot have moss on the roof. The buyer's insurance company may not insure.
Yeah.
So if you want to kill your deal, then leave the moss on there for sure, right?
And part of the reason we're talking about it this time of year is because we will have days that that's sunny, and followed probably pretty quickly by some rainy days. So that process of getting that white stuff on the roof and getting it washed off, that's how that happened.
And it does take 4 to 6 weeks to kill that moss. It's not like it's dead the next day, right?
Takes a bit of time.
Yeah, so we gotta be careful about that. Okay, siding and trim. Everybody's got different types of siding. Sometimes it's wood, sometimes it's concrete, sometimes it's
Aluminum,
vinyl, right?
concrete plank.
Yep. So every different type of siding has a texture to it, right? There's no completely smooth, glossy siding. The first thing you want to do is when you have siding, if it is siding that can be painted, you got to put a high gloss exterior paint on the outside. That gloss repels the water. You don't ever want to paint your outside of your house with a flat paint. No. I don't think they even make exterior flat, but you never know. It would be the cheap version if they do have exterior flat. Anyway, so you got to be careful about your siding because it is the envelope that keeps the water out and the cold out and hopefully the heat in when you're heating it or cooling it in the winter or summer. So you got to do a walk around. You got to look and see if you've lost pieces of siding. If I can't count the number of times that people have barbecued and then put their barbecue right up against vinyl siding on their house. Next thing you know, it melts that huge area right behind the barbecue. So yeah. Anyways, and trying to find vinyl siding that matches 10 years after the home's been built and the siding has kind of faded in color.
Not easy.
Really hard. So then you got this bright blue against a faded blue where the rest of the house is. So yeah, anyways, it can be a challenge. So got to make sure that you're not missing any siding. If siding is broken or there's a crack in it.
Check for dry rot, especially around windows, doors, trim. That's where the rot usually happens first. It may tend to be less well painted originally. So take a look at that. Make sure that all those pieces are healthy. The other thing about windows is just making sure that, like, if you have double pane windows, that the seals aren't blown. What does that mean? It means the gas between the panes is eking out and it is not insulating your house as well as those windows are intended to.
So it will look foggy.
Foggy, yeah. So just take a look at those things. Now is the time to get them fixed. And it's not as hard as you may think to fix a double pane window like that. They have inserts so you don't have to remove the entire window. It's a matter of taking out one of the inserts and replacing it. So much cheaper than you might think it would be, and pretty easy to do.
Yeah, that's a DIY thing that you can do, but you do have to measure it properly, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's also, if you have vinyl windows, there are things called, they have weep holes. And you got to make sure that moss and dirt doesn't get caught up in those weep holes because then any water that hits the window, if it gets into the track, it won't drain out, it will drain in. So you got to be careful or you'll have a windowsill full of water and you won't see it because it's underneath the track and so then it'll just be growing mold. And you know that the whole mold thing, it's really bad for your breathing. So,
it is really bad for your breathing.
And you don't want that inside your bedrooms because that's usually where it's
going
to hit, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, siding, trim, chimneys, windows, sidewalks.
Sidewalks, again, trip hazards. Brad mentioned about concrete and it cracks. And so when water gets in there and it freezes, that exacerbates or makes the cracks bigger. So just from a safety standpoint, making sure that they're taken care of. If you are in the city limits, for example, and it's the city's responsibility to take care of the sidewalks, if there's a big issue, let the city know. Make them aware because...
You mean like a big tree root that's...
popping up popping the concrete up. Contact them.
Yeah. The other thing about concrete is that it's going to crack. Nobody's concrete doesn't crack. As it dries, the ground underneath it, all it has to do is have just a little shift, and you'll get a crack in your concrete. There are ways that concrete companies can make the cracks go in a certain direction because they almost pre-cut it by having a band in there that allows a weak point and the concrete cracks in a relatively straight line. So if you see cracks in concrete, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's
failing.
a problem.
No.
But if you see cracking and then heaving, or what they call primary or secondary movement, so you get a slab and then you got the crack and then it twists or it buckles, right?
Or it
shifts or it drops up or down. This is when you know that there's a bigger problem somewhere and you need to have a professional come and look at it.
Yep.
Super important. Now, the crawl space.
Last but not least.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there are foundation vents in everybody's crawl space. The big myth out there is that you need to cover those up in the winter. I would never suggest, unless you're in a spot where it's like 40 below
I was going to
all
say,
winter.
if it's very, very, very
right?
cold, that's a different story.
But if you're
where
in
we're
some
at,
kind of a temperate climate, so outside of, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska,
Alaska.
super cold areas, don't ever put those styrofoam blocks in your foundation vents, because the only way to keep the underside of your home healthy is to let the air exchange
breathe,
right? Back to if you crawl underneath your house, you don't even have to crawl into your house. You can just look underneath there with a flashlight. And if you don't see black plastic, you don't have a vapor barrier.
Mm-hmm.
There are building codes out there that require the plastic to be black. We've crawled underneath some homes and it's clear plastic underneath there. And the inspection has failed because it's clear plastic. So they want the black plastic underneath there. They call it visqueen. And it's a specific millage that they want. It's real thick stuff. It's not that thin stuff like a baggie.
Yeah.
Right?
Not like your garbage can liner.
No. Imagine 3 or 4 garbage bags all taped together. It's thick, right?
It's thick.
I just had a call the other day from one of our agents, and she says, we just had a home inspection done, and the other agent says there's a $9,000 problem in the crawl space. And she said, but my seller has 3 sump pumps underneath the house. And I'm like, why would you need 3 sump pumps under the house if there's not a problem? Right? And so she said, well, if they have sump pumps, why do we need to do anything underneath the house? And I'm like, okay, well, and that kind of made me think maybe we should start helping people understand a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. So the grading underneath the house, that changes over time because you never know what kind of little furry rodents you have burrowing up underneath. Mm-hmm. And if there's a water table under your house at all, if you're not down in the crawl space, crawling around, you don't know what's happening down there. We've gone into crawl spaces where you put your hands on the black plastic and it acts like a waterbed. I mean, you could see the water rippling around the whole foundation.
Not good.
I've actually done a home inspection where we opened up the hatch to crawl in the crawl space and the water was 6 inches below the floor. The whole crawl space was 24 inches deep in water because the sump pump had stopped working. And it was just something as simple as the float had flipped over and it wasn't turning the sump pump on. So the home
and as a result,
that water was all electrically charged. So because
don't touch it.
The home inspector literally put his what do you call that thing? The probe in there to see if it's got an electrical charge, and it lit just by touching the water. And I'm like,
don't touch the water. Because
I went to put my hand in, he was like, stop! Total novice, don't know anything about electricity. Or daredevil, you choose. So yeah.
There's another option too, but
we'll leave
it.
Idiot. Okay, I get it. Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, it's amazing to see the stuff that can happen underneath the house, right? That had been going on so long, it had rusted through the HVAC vents. Mm-hmm. The HVAC vents were half, and nobody wondered why the senior citizen that was there was having breathing problems. He was pouring mold into his house every time the furnace turned on. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
You don't know what you don't know. So you need to explore. You need to know your house or have somebody help you figure that out.
Yeah. And, and if you've got, it doesn't, for a couple $100s, you could have a home inspector come and crawl under your house and do the entire inspection of the envelope of the house, right? Or and he can come inside, do all that stuff. So we have to be. Homes are a big expense.
They're the biggest asset that we can invest in.
Right. So the thing is, if you are going to invest a couple $100,000 in a home, you should invest a couple $100 at least every couple years. I would say 3 to 5 years. Have a home inspector come through, pay him the $500 to go through the house and give you a punch list of the things that are wrong. Because there are some things that you can let slide. Other things, if you let them slide, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars more in deferred maintenance costs.
The other thing I would say about that is that if you have record of how you've maintained your home, when you go to sell your home, that really shows to buyers that you've been intentional about taking care of your property. And that becomes a huge selling point for people. So
Yep, absolutely. So last thing is not only the trees and shrubs on your property, but the trees and shrubs on your neighboring property, right? Yeah, it's a good look. So here's the thing. You're in a really, let's say you're in a snowy climate and you've broken limbs on your trees. Those tree limbs could now be hanging over your house. Your tree could have a broken limb hanging over a neighbor's house. And if it's your tree limb that falls on their house, that's your homeowner's insurance that's going to pay for that.
Right.
So take a walk around your property, look at your fences. Did sections of your fence fall over? Have boards come loose? I mean, just take a look at the overall health of your yard and your fence. As plants grow, they grow up against your house.
I was going to say, yeah.
Totally not a good idea. So you want to trim everything back to within 6 inches of your siding. You don't ever want to let it touch your siding because that just introduces water and rubbing. And as the wind rubs some plants, it will literally take all the paint right off your siding.
Yep.
And now you've got a weak spot for water to get in.
Yep.
And then mold and mushrooms could happen depending on the type of siding it is. So it's a problem. So we want to make sure that we get past that. So don't overlook things like your yard and your trees, but you also got to look for your neighbors because that same thing that we talked about, broken limb on your neighbors, could break your fence, fall on your house. You never know.
Yep.
So
Good fences make good neighbors. So
that's true. Okay. So anything else? I mean, there's so
many things, but all that to say, it's the time. It's spring. It's time for, taking care, getting outside, enjoying the sunshine when we get it. And with that, we hope you have a very lovely spring, and we'll see you next time.
absolutely make sure you take care of that house.